Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast hosted by the City Bar Presidential Task Force on Artificial Intelligence and Digital Technologies. I'll refer to that here as the Task Force. My name is Brescia, and I will moderate this podcast. By way of background, I am a member of the Task Force, specifically its Subcommittee on Artificial Intelligence and Access to Justice. That subcommittee has as its co-chairs Professor Abby Gluck of Yale Law School and McGregor Smythe, the Executive Director of New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. It is an honor to work with these individuals and others on the task force and subcommittee, and it is my distinct pleasure to have this opportunity to help facilitate our discussion today, which will explore ways in which generative artificial intelligence and other technologies can help address the access to justice gap in the United States, where as many as 9 in 10 low-income and half of all middle-income Americans attempt to face their legal problems without sufficient legal representation. Technology has long shaped the practice of law. The transformation of the law office of the practicing lawyer in the late 19th century was dramatic, with the introduction of the typewriter, rapid reproduction of judicial decisions, and the start of the use of the telephone in law practice. These innovations played a part in the growth, scale, and reach of the legal industry. That was a key inflection point in the history of the American legal profession. Are we at another one of these key inflection points that could transform the practice of law yet again? In November 2022, the world was introduced to ChatGPT, a platform that harnessed a new type of artificial intelligence known as generative artificial intelligence. While the concepts of artificial intelligence and machine learning were not new and had been embedded in lots of technologies that lawyers used every day, generative artificial intelligence is new. It places new capacities for dealing with large amounts of data and does not just analyze that data, but also generates answers from it. Given that what lawyers do every day is analyze information and apply it to their client's situation, this led some to think that this new form of technology could replace lawyers. We are over 2 years out from the introduction of this new technology, and to paraphrase Samuel Clemens, perhaps the news of the death of the legal profession is greatly exaggerated. It's too soon to say whether this technology will completely replace lawyers someday. In fact, we learn seemingly every day about legal professionals and unrepresented parties using such technologies to their detriment, as in instances where the technology does what has come to be known as hallucinate or produce flawed results from the prompts fed to it. But what many lawyers are discovering is that there are a range of beneficial uses of this technology that can make their work more efficient and effective. And when we improve the work of lawyers and other legal professionals in this way, it can benefit clients in several ways. By bringing the cost of legal services down and making the ability of nonprofit and pro bono providers of legal services able to serve more clients. Today, we're going to talk about an exciting initiative led by the pro bono team at Microsoft that is working to provide critical legal services to individuals in need and free of charge. We will discuss this initiative specifically, what the team is calling LUZ, L-U-Z. We will also explore with our guests what the prospects are for initiatives like it to improve access to justice more generally. Joining us for this very important discussion are 3 individuals who have helped develop LUZ and are eager to share some of their experiences and thoughts on the subject of how technology can improve access to justice for communities in need. These are Adrian Palma, Microsoft's Global Pro Bono Manager and Digital Strategist, Amae Kurre, a paralegal on Microsoft's U.S. immigration team and a user experience, user interface expert designer who played a crucial role in the tool's development, and Malou Chávez, the Executive Director of the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project, NWIRP, the partner organization that helped develop the tool. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start with Malou. Can you tell us about your organization, who it serves, And what are some of what we might call the challenges or pain points your office faced in delivering services to your clients?
Well, thank you. And it's really nice to be here to discuss this important development. At Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, we help people with low income or no income with their immigration services that they need in order to seek protection here in the U.S. We are a legal services organization in Washington State, and we focus on the direct legal services that we can provide to community members in Washington State, but through our community education and our systems change, including impact litigation, our impact goes beyond Washington State. And so we're able to change practices, policies, and or challenge them in order to defend and advance the rights of immigrants. One thing that we were experiencing with our legal clinic in focusing on serving recipients of DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is the high need for services. And as you may be aware that when DACA was introduced in 2012, it was an amazing protection given to people, young adults who came to the U.S. children. And it allowed for protection from deportation. It also allowed a work authorization and renewal every 2 years. And so our team partnered with Microsoft to ensure that DACA eligible recipients were able to first apply as initial applicants, but then subsequently be able to renew their work authorization and their protection. And this would have to happen every 2 years. And in 2017, we experienced challenges from the federal administration in an attempt to do away with DACA. And there was much reliance on the part of the communities, both the recipients, but also the entire the community in large, because there are so many benefits that this protection provides both for the individuals, their families and communities, but also for the economy and for employers. And so our team continued to work on what we call legal clinics. And we were partnering monthly, having in-person clinics. And then the pandemic happened in 2020, and we had to go virtual, remote, start thinking about how we can use technology in order to leverage our ability to support client communities. And as we thought about our legal clinics and DACA being at risk and the ability for recipients to continue to renew this protection, we realized that we had to move from in-person to virtual and try to support as many community members as we could. And so our legal clinics that were originally based in out of the Seattle office became statewide virtual legal clinics. And eventually we figured that there could be another way that we could increase both streamlining the process, but increasing capacity to support the community. And here's where Microsoft came in. Our work is to serve communities through their individual cases, family-related cases. We serve asylum seekers, survivors of violence, youth and children, lawful permanent residents who are becoming naturalized, and people who have family that they want to petition for. All of our clients come from different walks of life, different backgrounds. We serve clients from over 150 countries, speaking more than 65 languages. And we had to think about how we're able to do this in a way where we're supporting this group of clients, the DACA recipients and DACA eligible community members. And we are very thankful that Microsoft has thought of this new platform in order to streamline both operations, but also to expand the capacity of our DACA legal clinics, in which many Microsoft volunteers continue to join and help support this process for renewals. There was some point when we thought that DACA would go away. There's been so many court decisions and rulings. More recently, the Fifth Circuit this year on January 17, 2025, ruled that major parts of the DACA rule that was issued by the previous federal administration were inconsistent with the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is the statute that we follow for our work. However, the Fifth Circuit also limited the effect of its ruling in several important ways. So first, the decision allowed for current DACA recipients to apply to renew their DACA protection while the case is on appeal, which means that current DACA recipients can continue to apply for this protection in order to renew their DACA. And then second, the Fifth Circuit decided that the relief was limited to Texas, which is where it originated from. And this means that the ruling strikes down parts of DACA that applies only to Texas and the people in Texas. And then the last thing that the Fifth Circuit's decision did, it upheld that part of DACA allows federal officials to classify DACA recipients as low priority for deportation and not to remove them. And so the decision was both a welcoming decision, but also an alert to continue being proactive about how we protect our current communities, and in particular, how we can continue to support this protection and help as many people renew their DACA, because we know that while initial DACA applications are not being received, renewals are important. And in Washington State, over 16,000 people have been able to benefit from DACA. Every year, about 2,000 high school students who are undocumented graduate. Some of them were not eligible for DACA, but those who have been eligible for DACA, we want to make sure that we're protecting as many of them through the renewal of their application.
So thank you for that. That's a great explanation and gives us a sense of the lay of the land and some of the work that the organization was doing. So I'm going to turn to Adrian now. Can you explain a little bit how Microsoft got involved with NWIRP?
Yes. Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Malou, for setting the context here of the importance of DACA and of the Dreamer community in the United States, right? I myself am a DACA recipient. I'm a Dreamer. I was born in Mexico, immigrated to the United States at the age of 6. This is my home. I am American in every single way except for a piece of paper. And it's important to realize, right, and to recognize that the majority of Americans support DACA. 80% of Americans support DACA. This is not a political issue. This is a bipartisan issue. These are our community members. These are our neighbors. These are our nurses, our firefighters. We need to protect Dreamers. And part of the beauty of the partnership with NWIRP, the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project, and Microsoft is that since June 15th, 2012, when former President Barack Obama issued an executive order to establish the DACA program, we have been partnering alongside NWIRP to be able to protect Dreamers in Washington State, to be able to help them apply for DACA, to renew their DACA. And so this partnership is an example of the commitment that Microsoft has to pro bono legal services to indigent communities across the United States and across the globe. And Ray, as you contextualize the broader access to justice crisis happening in the United States, it's important that we develop these partnerships, right? So that we can help NWIRP scale their capacity as well, right? So at Microsoft, we have hundreds of attorneys that work at Microsoft. We have legal and business professionals, coders, engineers. We have many individuals in our community who are colleagues of ours who are interested in using their skills for good. And so my job at Microsoft is to encourage these individuals to contribute to the impact that NWIRP is already having in Washington State, in Seattle, and be able to partner alongside NWIRP and other nonprofit organizations to be able to address this broader access to justice crisis that's happening, that's affecting some of our neighbors, right? Individuals who we may know that just are not able to access the law, just given some of the inequities and some of the challenges in accessing the law.
So your initial interaction with the Immigrants Rights Project was very analog, right? That it was volunteer attorneys and paralegals working to provide the data in the clinics to the clients of the project. But then it shifted, right, to try to find a technology-based solution to the volume that the project was seeing in clients. So how did that shift come about?
So currently, we continue to do the monthly DACA clinic with the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project. So prior to the development of LUS, every month we would allocate about 2 hours per month to help about 8 to 10 clients. Given the current need, there's about 600,000 dreamers across the United States. As Malou mentioned, there's 16,000 dreamers in Washington State who currently have DACA. Given that reality, and given the reality that DACA is our only lifeline, right, to employment, to health insurance, to be able to contribute to American society, we partnered with NWIRP with the realization that we could do more to scale the impact that NWIRP is already having in the community, right? So we are a technology company, Microsoft. We have powerful technology. And so why are we not using it to help scale access to justice efforts? Like you mentioned, Ray, 92% of low-income Americans do not receive adequate or any legal help every single year, and the justice crisis is only growing. And so with that realization, we see technology as a catalyst, as a potential exponential factor, right, in helping us scale the delivery of pro bono legal services. And I'm so happy that Malou and the NWIRP staff attorneys as well were willing partners in the exploration of this technology. And I'm so excited to continue to explore how tech can help scale, and LUS will be a tangible example of the power of this technology to scale for good.
So let's get a little bit into the weeds, but not too much into the weeds of the actual project that helps to streamline some of the work that's being done on behalf of and with the project. And maybe bring Amae in here at this point. Can you talk a little bit about the user experience and design aspects of the project and tell us a little bit about what it does?
Yeah. So we have built a solution using document intelligence, and it basically takes a process of filling out forms that was very manual, and it automates most of the process. And through that automation, we were also able to build in checkpoints, and it really reduces the amount of errors that occur when you are manually drafting forms. So huge reduction in time, huge reduction in errors, which helps do more applications faster. And the design was so important to the scaling effort because we may be getting volunteers who've never done this before. And so it was so important to make a technology solution that was intuitive and easy to use. It's always important in design, but it was especially important in this project because then you can reduce training and maybe of the volunteer, you can reduce the time that takes. And when they have an intuitive, easy to use interface that walks them through the whole process, has little information bubbles to guide them, and an AI interface that also can help them, then you can train a volunteer very quickly who's never done DACA before and just start going.
For our listeners, explain a little bit about the process. It seems like there's an initial application, but then regular renewals, and your program is helping on both pieces of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's no more initial applications for DACA, but there's a renewal of DACA and the work permit. And that is basically forms and an application and documentation that you create and send to the immigration service. And that's what the clinics help the clients do, is prepare that application.
And what is the technology that sort of works through all of that? Is it generative AI? Is it AI? What is it?
So I'm going to turn that over to Adrian. So he is more really well-versed in the tech part.
Yes, and in terms of the technology that fuels the infrastructure of Luz, it's a combination of Azure AI Document Intelligence, an Azure OpenAI model, and also Azure AI Studio. So the Luz platform is essentially an intelligent CRM system. It's a system that allows pro bono teams to manage their DACA workflows, right? You're able to manage every case. You have a user interface to also manage volunteers. But within that CRM type of web application, we infuse generative AI. And so there's an AI chatbot that has a prompt library that automates pro bono volunteer tasks, such as sending emails to clients to review forms, right? So for administrators, there's a prompt that summarizes all of the case statuses for you or summarizes the discrepancies in the cases for you as well. So really thinking about the workflows that all of us are involved in to help one dreamer. Luz is a platform that takes all of those workflows into account, does not change the workflows per what Amae just mentioned in terms of knowledge management and onboarding new volunteers. We wanted to make sure that the design was respectful of the already successful clinic model that we've had with NWIRP. And using that infrastructure, we just infuse layers of generative AI technology and other non-AI technology into Luz just to be able to scale every single one of those workflows and reduce the time commitment that it takes to help one Dreamer clients, which we approximate is about 10 hours, the entire life cycle of helping one client, and reducing that to about 1 hour through the help of both Gen AI and non-AI technology.
May, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I would say, like, if you visualize it, like, we took all these separate places we used to do work in Word and Adobe, in SharePoint, and just all these different places, and we just brought it into one place. So it's like a one-stop shop where you can access everything, and there's as much automation as possible to make it as fast as possible.
And that's where the design and Amae's role here was so critical, right? Because we took all of these workflows, and Amae is an expert DACA clinic volunteer. Amae, I think you've been volunteering for the DACA clinics for about 10 years now, right? Since the program started. And so what we did is we took all of these workflows, we created a Visio diagram that outlined all of the workflows, and then we saw where the bottlenecks were, right? And then we were able, to Amae's point, again, not create a totally new infrastructure, but take what was already existing and what was successful, just infuse technology into it. And that's where a designer is so critical, but not just a designer, someone with the lived experience and someone with the volunteer experience as well, right? So we did not have Amae on this team with all of her experience being an expert clinic volunteer, then our design could have not reflected the realities of the actual volunteer experience, right? And that's where responsible AI and UX UI design is so critical in developing these responsible AI systems so that we can ensure that the system is actually conducive to the needs of our volunteers and ultimately the needs of our clients that are referred to us by the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project.
So it's interesting the way you describe that. We'll come back to this issue where I think one would say for this project, the attorney is the client, is the customer, right? Not necessarily the organization's client, because you're tracking the needs and the workflow of the attorney or the paralegal working on the case more so than the client. But so let's bring Malou. Do you want to come back in and sort of tell a little bit about how this is working in your organization now?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the concept of how this has made it possible for the legal services provider, the attorney, the paralegal, the volunteer doing the work, the ability to streamline this process and have that one-stop shop and have that ability to develop the documents and forms that need to be submitted. Ultimately, it continues to be a legal process that our client community members who are applying for renewal of DACA are benefiting for this purpose, right, for this protection. And at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, we continue to be the legal services provider where we continue to review and ensure that there is correct information and information that won't hurt the client's case. And what is amazing about this is that the information that gets collected is there for a very short period of time in order to process and be able to print out and have the client review, have the attorneys on our end review for accuracy and correct information. And then it gets erased. But the organization at NWIRP, Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, we continue to have that access for our clients because record keeping is important in immigration, in the immigration process. It's important that we continue the ability to go back and check what we submitted 2 years before this new renewal, for example.
And so it seems to me that with all of this, unlike those examples that I pointed to earlier, where attorneys might use generative AI and to spit out an answer and drop it into their brief without really reviewing it themselves, the better practice with these technologies is to keep a human in the loop in a lot of different ways, both on the front end as information is going into the system, but then also on the back end, as you described, Malou, where you're reviewing the outputs, you're making sure that everything is accurate, and you're preserving client confidentiality as well. So there's still those critical pieces where the AI isn't getting out in front of its own skis, that you all are being very careful about first modeling the AI on the processes that have developed organically over the years to make the program, as efficient as possible in its analog form. You're in a way recreating that in the digital form, but with some shortcuts and some beneficial interventions that can shorten the length of time and probably also decreases the errors. If you have input certain information once and you make sure it's accurate, when that information is distributed throughout the different forms and applications that need to be filed, it is accurate each time, rather than having the risk of human error that at one phase the information might be input incorrectly. So let's talk a little bit, Adrian, about how you see this perhaps serving as a model for other initiatives, but we also, if there's anything you wanted to sort of close the loop on, so to speak, on this initiative, feel free.
Yes. And I just wanted to go back to a comment that you made, Ray, that through this technological development, the attorney is the client. And I just want to delve a little bit more into that, because the attorney is one of the stakeholders that is greatly benefiting from this. But ultimately, we designed this tool to help scale NWIRP's capacity, but ultimately to help provide the best pro bono legal services we can as partners with NWIRP to the dreamer. And one example of that is with the monthly clinics that we've been doing virtually since the pandemic with NWIRP. They are at a predefined time, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, once a month, virtually at Microsoft Teams. We recognized, and through feedback from NWIRP staff, that time does not work for some of the clients, right? I mean, they might be in school, they might be at work. 3 to 5 p.m. is not an ideal time to set aside and do your DACA renewal. And so knowing that, the entire design of Luz was influenced with that sort of knowledge, because we wanted to create a collaborative infrastructure that allowed any pro bono volunteer at any time of the day to be able to work on a DACA case, but at the same time, give the client ultimate flexibility in being able to receive assistance at a time that works for them too, right? And being able to scale in a way that's accessible to the client was at the forefront of this development. And just going back to the human in the loop conversation, and Amae can probably speak to this a little bit more, there are 4 layers of human oversight in Luz for every single application that we prepare: the pro bono volunteer, does a layer of human oversight of the AI-produced work product. They then do a layer of human oversight with the client. An expert reviewer who is also a pro bono volunteer will review that work. That is a third layer of oversight. And then once we finalize a case, NWIRP staff attorneys get an email with a SharePoint link that takes them to the finalized file. They also get an automated list of all of the discrepancies in the work that the pro bono volunteer did. And so that serves as a fourth layer of human oversight. And that was so critical for us to incorporate all these layers, because with immigration applications, you mess up one data piece, it could have consequences for your future immigration applications, right? And so human oversight was at the forefront of this design to develop a responsible AI tool. And we wanted to ultimately ensure that this tool scaled the delivery of pro bono legal services in a way that is accessible and a way that is respectful to the lived experience of the clients that we're trying to serve with NWIRP. And then just talking about what the future of these tools look like. When we created Luz, and Amae, again, can speak probably a little bit more to this too, we designed this in a way that the infrastructure could be replicated, right? So the code base of Luz could then be replicated to develop other pro bono co-pilots to scale access to justice efforts for veterans, for victims of domestic violence, for individuals who are being evicted. And so when we engaged in this development project, we're thinking broad here. We're thinking that this is the starting point of a pro bono co-pilot ecosystem to help scale access to justice efforts. And our intention is to then, again, repurpose this infrastructure and scale it to other pro bono matter types.
And do you find, so there are cases, and you mentioned some of them, some classes of cases. I can think of others, landlord-tenant, consumer debt, where there's high volume, very similar cases. Many of the cases may be relatively straightforward. One could see these sorts of interfaces, these sorts of programs helping in those cases where, in many instances, the lawyers and other legal staff may be doing sort of highly repetitive tasks. What about the outlier? What about the case that doesn't fit neatly within the interface? What is the advantage of having a system like this? And I would imagine that it can identify those cases that are relatively straightforward and one can use the system to reduce the amount of time by, say, 80, 90% that is needed to address the client's legal needs. Does this system, and are there other mechanisms that you can think of where a system like this could flag the hard cases? And because of the time saving that is generated by the more repetitive, straightforward cases, does it free up folks to continue to represent those harder cases in a more traditional way? Or are there capacities within this system for addressing the more complex cases? I don't, any one of you can jump right in on this one.
What's great about this partnership is that at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, we have something called the DACA portal, which is the first interaction that a DACA recipient who's intending to renew their protection accesses first to determine whether they are a person who would benefit from a legal clinic for this purpose, which is those faster type of cases where there are no complications, or whether they would benefit from having that direct representation by one of the NWIRP attorneys. And so we are able to filter out those complex cases and take those in-house. And so we are essentially determining who is the best or which case is the best option for that fast legal process through the legal clinic concept, or the taking on the case because there are complexities like being in deportation proceedings or having arrest history or having departed the country without permission, where we want to make sure that we're protecting that type of client when it could be the result could be detrimental if we were to proceed through a legal clinic and miss things. So it's been amazing to be able to use both the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project pre-screening process combined with our legal clinic partnership, and now with Luz, this AI platform that allows us to now streamline the process and operations and our capacity. So we've been able to save so much time where we're doing the work through on a rolling basis as applications are ready to be reviewed versus that time slot 1 day a month.
And I'll just add to that. So with NWIRP doing that initial screening through the DACA portal, even complex cases that then get sent to us for a dreamer, right, who may have traveled outside of the country on advanced parole, or they may have some sort of something in the record that just needs to be elaborated on in their DACA application. Luz flags all of that for us as well. Like there is also a functionality when you're doing the staffing of pro bono volunteers to these particular cases. Luz will recommend particular volunteers, like Amae, for example, is an expert clinic volunteer to take on the more complex cases as well. So we've developed an infrastructure within Luz to be able to triage those more complex cases and ensure that the most experienced volunteers serve those particular clients as well.
I think one of the critiques, and you sometimes hear this from the legal services community, the nonprofit legal services community, is that these sorts of interventions they're not equivalent to a lawyer, that a technology-based solution that does not address every client in a full service way is not fair to folks who cannot afford an attorney. It sounds to me like what you all are saying is, at the end of the day, the clients want their applications to go through to the greatest extent possible. Those that have merit are recognized. What do you say to concerns that, well, this is not providing full services to these clients? What do your clients want, Malou? Do they want their applications approved, or do they want a lawyer? What would you say?
I think that we are living in a time when this might go away, this protection might go away. And so to the extent that we're able to support as many community members in their renewals, this is a solution that helps gets us there. We know that there is a potential decision coming down that may do away with DACA. And so how many people can we protect through clinic models, through the platform Luz, through direct services? And as an organization that has worked with this client population since the DACA program was established, we're able to see how this protection has led to the ability to then apply for something else, a different immigration protection. And so we are not only just securing that work authorization and protection from deportation, but we're also allowing the possibility of our clients then being able to have a family petition to get a green card and therefore naturalize 5 years later or 3 years later. And so I think that our client community ultimately wants that protection. They want to be able to have that work authorization and have that security and stability in their lives, be able to provide for their families, take care of themselves and others. And I think that we are to reckon with how we leverage technology in a safe way, where we are still keeping that confidentiality, that client relationship, and the client attorney privileges are still there.
I would say this is where working with a designer is really beneficial. It's very common in systems and processes that you maybe catch 80, 90%, and there are outliers. But if you account for the outliers in the design, and if you include human oversight in the right places, why would you not pursue a solution that helps so many people because of the 10% that don't fit that? Because you can also create a solution, even if it's more manual, for that 10%.
So I could see someone hearing this and saying, well, this is great for a technology company that just happens to have a large in-house counsel office that is, providing pro bono services to design something like this. But the overwhelming majority of lawyers work in law offices first, and they've got a small IT department. So unlike the opposite, right, which you guys are an IT company with a small legal services, well, this is a pretty big legal services office. But what do you say to the lawyers in a small nonprofit, in a firm that's trying to provide pro bono, that's not embedded in one of the one of the largest technology companies in the world? What do you say to them about how to figure out whether there might be some technology-based solutions to some of the pain points that they're experiencing in the delivery of their legal services? And I throw that out to the entire group.
Well, I would say partnerships are critical here. They are the glue that allows us all to contribute and to scale to the pro bono ecosystem and to help more clients ultimately. And with Luz, it started from a global hackathon project. So Microsoft does a global hackathon every single year in the month of September. We're able to take, as full-time employees, the week off to hack, to develop products. It doesn't have to be for social good. It could be for whatever interest you have. And so we started this development from there. We were able to engage 20 plus volunteers of all skill sets to contribute to the development of a system to scale specifically NWIRP's and Microsoft's DACA clinics and scale our impact that way. And as a large company, it's a large IT company, as you mentioned, Ray. I mean, that I see as one of my personal responsibilities of how I can take those kind of infrastructures like a global hackathon, partner with an organization like NWIRP or other nonprofits or law firms even, right? And co-develop together, hack together, develop solutions together, because ultimately all of us are part of this pro bono ecosystem, but all of us have our own unique responsibilities and our own unique skill sets and expertise in the ecosystem. And none of us can build this by ourselves. We need to partner with one another. All of our skill sets and experiences go together, right, to build these responsible AI systems. And only through that sort of infrastructure, I think we can safely develop these tools to scale access to justice efforts. And so partnerships really are the key here to develop these tools in a responsible way.
I would echo that. And you've got a partnership, obviously, in-house with the lawyers and the technologists and a community partner, which is, I think, essential to these initiatives to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the community. I would also throw in there university partnerships, because there are researchers, academics in this space that are looking for projects and looking for ways to use the great technologies that they're learning about and learning how to use and learning how to program. And they're looking for public service initiatives. I mean, most computer science departments don't have the same sort of pedagogical component like we have in law schools, of law school clinics. Some might have a public service requirement for their students. But if you're out there and you've got a local university, community college, reach out and see if there are partnerships that you could form to leverage some of the resources there, because they're looking for ways for real world applications and for experiences for their students, much like law schools do now with law school clinics. So one of the concerns that some raise about using generative artificial intelligence, we could certainly talk about hallucinations. Maybe that will be another podcast that the City Bar does, and how to protect against that. But one of the concerns in the space where folks are trying to improve access to justice through new technologies is that, what about unauthorized practice of law rules? It sounds like, and this is why one of the reasons why I mentioned that in some respects the program and project you've developed is really attorney facing, And it's not, except for at that entry point, that triage point that you described, Malou, it seems that when these tools are attorney facing and the attorney is ultimately responsible for the output, there are no unauthorized practice of law rules. Just as if someone used Lexis or Westlaw, they're relying on the output from the searches that they do. And we've come to believe that those searches are valid. So similarly, in a project like yours, the attorney is at the beginning and at the end of the process, so there's no concern about unauthorized practice of law. What do any of you have thoughts about when technology may be consumer facing and directly consumer facing, and how to protect against concerns about unauthorized practice of law?
Go ahead.
No, go for Malou.
No, that is unauthorized practice of law is a concern. We know that our communities are vulnerable to potential fraudulent practices, or maybe well-intended, but the person does not know what they're doing and they're not an immigration attorney able to provide legal advice. As well-intended as it could be, sometimes we have family members completing forms and submitting them, putting the other family member at risk. So that is a true concern in our communities. Whenever announced potential protections come out, there is a possibility that someone is going to try to take advantage of that possibility to collect money from community members who are desperate to receive work authorization or other immigration protections. So that is a very true concern. I think the difference here is that we're giving clients an option. When the case is complex, we get to determine whether it's an in-house case or a legal clinic case. We also have partnerships with another local firm, Perkins Coie, here in the Washington State area, where we can have the client decide that they want to do a regular legal clinic and not engage in this AI-generated process, right, where they may have concerns. But we know that Microsoft really values privacy and security, and we have been able to partner to develop that and ensure that this process platform is as accessible and also protects the values that we really care about and protects our clients. But ultimately, the options are there, and we want to continue to think about how we increase that ability to protect client community.
And I'll just add to that, Malou, too. You mentioned like privacy and security. To develop any AI system at Microsoft, we need to go through rigorous, responsible AI reviews, accessibility reviews, privacy, compliance, security reviews. And so everything that we get developed, everything that is developed at Microsoft goes through those processes, and that ensures that the AI system that is developed is responsible and conducive to these, ultimately, the security of clients' PII, their data, and of the benefit for the client ultimately. And so for us, with unauthorized practice of law, right, it's like we see an opportunity to take these rigorous infrastructures that we have at Microsoft to develop AI systems and use those to our advantage to ensure that these AI systems that we develop are actually helping and are actually conducive to the needs that we've all been talking about through this podcast. And with that said, we're here to use technology to empower our partners as well, right? To empower the work that NWIRP staff attorneys have been doing for a long time in the community. And we're not trying to use AI to replace attorneys. We're trying to empower attorneys in the process through the design that Amae led, through the human oversight that has been incorporated here, through the rigorous assessments and reviews that we've had to go through to go into production for Luz. Through all of that, our ultimate intent is to help scale the capacity of NWIRP and other nonprofits so that they can serve more people.
Yeah, and if the nonprofits have to turn away people, the chances are they're probably going to turn to others who may assist them and not be attorneys, or they may face their legal problems without a lawyer, which is all too often the case. So I think that what net overall, the work that you all are doing is expanding access to justice and reach and helping to prevent the unauthorized practice of law, particularly in communities where it does occur all too often for people who don't have access to an attorney. Well, this has been just a terrific conversation. I really appreciate all of the work that all of you are doing. Malou, where can people learn more about the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project?
Thank you. Please visit our website, www.nwirp.org. We have resources. We have how to partner with us and how to support. One of the best things to do is volunteer. And you can do it through language access, taking a legal pro bono case that you can work on with mentorship from two amazing pro bono coordinators that we have at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, but also our staff. And then participate in legal clinics. We know that there is so much need, and we invite everyone to consider taking on a case here at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. So please reach out. Thank you.
And with some of this work, Adrian, and are there demonstrations of these or other projects somewhere that folks can look to see little videos or presentations you've done that are out in the wild that maybe we could link on the show page for the podcast?
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Yes, there are resources. If you just go on google.com and then type Microsoft Pro Bono Program, you'll see a video showcasing Luz, for example, so you can learn a little bit more about Luz, the story behind Luz as well. And we encourage anyone to become a pro bono volunteer. That's something that at Microsoft, we truly try to promote pro bono volunteerism as a way for any individuals, any background, of any skill set to get involved and to help their community, right? Especially with so much need right now. By partnering with NWIRP, as Malou just mentioned, they provide mentorship to us. We partner with their staff attorneys on these cases. And so if you're an interpreter, if you're a software engineer, Amae and I are both not attorneys. We do a ton of pro bono work. We encourage all of you to get involved in this because the access to justice crisis globally and in the United States is only growing. And it is up to all of us to ensure that our community, our neighbors have adequate access to justice as well.
Amae, I'll let you have the last word. Any closing thoughts?
Just keep your user at the center of everything you do and develop responsibly. And there's no reason not to try new things.
I love that. All right. On that great note, I want to thank the task force and the subcommittee on artificial intelligence and access to justice for agreeing to host this podcast, and especially want to thank our guests, Malou Chávez of the Northwest Immigrants Rights Project, and Adrian Palma and Amae Kurre of Microsoft. Thank you for joining us today, for sharing your insights and all the work that you do day in and day out to promote access to justice.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.